Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I forgot to post that. Well, actually, no, I didn't forget to post it. What happened was I actually didn't realise I had no stamps. So no matter how much I wanted to try and get that thing posted, how am I supposed to do that if I don't have a bunch of second or first class stamps? But of course, you didn't come here to find out how frank my mistake was. The way I sliced it, you're here for politics. And admittedly, I had been recording a bunch of videos, but I haven't uploaded them because I felt they weren't good enough, with the exception of the one short I did. And in this icy cold wind that affects even me for once, I have to report on Tommy Robinson, because it turns out Keir the traitor Starmer is trying to move Tommy Robinson to Belmarsh prison solitary confinement. Breakfast sorted. Right. So Tommy's being moved, apparently, by Keir the traitor Starmer to Belmarsh. Well, that's what he plans on doing anyway. Now, I'm going to get the devil's advocate bit out first. Bear in mind that when he was down there was a group of people who put a lot of pressure on the Belmarsh governor, who I haven't been able to read up on because I only saw the video as I got up first thing in the morning, and I was too busy, you know, doing the usual stuff, the wash, the dress, all that stuff. But last time I checked, the governor actually conceded that Tommy should be getting more visits and that he would be treated a bit better. Now, the way I look at it is I've already made an argument about how he feels, stroke number one, how I feel he should be in an open prison. Although somebody was quick to point out why that wouldn't be a good idea, as it probably would put him in just as much danger as if he was put on the wing, I suspect. But maybe moving to Belmarsh, if he does get moved, maybe that governor will remember what he agreed to about basically giving him his visitation, giving him his rights to basically a better life in prison. Even though, let's face it, he shouldn't even be in prison for contempt of court. Remember, Lizzie Dearden was fined £10,000, but her company paid for that. If they were so worried about Tommy Robinson, why don't they just fine him? Oh, that's right, they've already declared him bankrupt through lawfare. The one thing I will condone using on the establishment themselves, the art of lawfare. Give them a taste of their own damn medicine. Maybe that's the one good thing you might be able to take from all this if he was moved to Belmarsh prison, quite frankly. However, I want people to remember that Belmarsh is a Category A prison. Maybe B at best. But it is, from last time I checked, Belmarsh is a Category A prison. It is meant for the most serious terrorist offenders, murderers, rapists, nonces, etc., etc. Not for somebody who's committed contempt of fucking court. So it begs the question, why is he being moved there? I suspect what this is effectively a death sentence through the back door. It is effectively an attempt to kill Tommy Robinson. After all, think about it. They failed over in Woodhill under the monster that is Nicola Marfleet. So now they're going to try and move him over to Belmarsh prison. And I suspect make his life an absolute hell. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks. You can say it with me. It doesn't suit the narrative. But what would I know? 34 years of life experience. I'm getting older by the second, and I can already feel the grey hairs sprouting through my head. But as I said before, whether or not I like Tommy Robinson, whether or not you like Tommy Robinson, or anybody else likes or dislikes Tommy Robinson, this is not a matter of left wing and right wing. This is a matter of what is right and what is wrong. And I don't think there has been a single journalist that has been sent to prison for contempt of court in the history of the UK. There have been normal people that have been sent to prison, but not journalists. I would say the exact same thing, even if it was someone like Lizzie Dipshit Dearden that was being politically persecuted. Though let's face it, that won't ever happen to her, because obviously she's part of the oligarchy. She's part of the establishment rule. She is part of, basically, the tyranny that goes on in this country. So of course she won't get politically persecuted. But I digress. The fact of the matter is, let me move over because that sun is really getting irritating. Let me put this into perspective for you. Only Tommy Robinson has been maliciously persecuted by the establishment. Maybe Julian Assange as well, but that's about it. But there is no other journalist that has been so maliciously persecuted as Tommy Robinson, ever. Nothing is going to change that. What we need to understand is Keir the traitor Starmer is thoroughly anti-British, and he will do everything in his power to destroy this country. And I have said it before, and I will say it here again. If anything happens to Tommy Robinson, if he is killed in prison, I seriously believe there will be a civil war. There will be a revolution like you would not believe. Like, we will see total chaos on the streets. And let me be clear, as I've always done every single time, without fail, I do not want to see those scenes. I do not want to see violent revolution take a hold of the country. However, I will completely understand if people feel that's the only option they have left, quite frankly. I don't think Keir the traitor Starmer understands what kind of a powder keg he's standing under right now. Because if that man dies, who do you think the first person they're going to go after is? I'll tell you now, it's not going to be Jimmy Carr. It's not going to be Frankie Boyle. No, it's going to be Keir the traitor Starmer and the treacherous establishment of the nonce party. I mean the Labour Party. Or maybe I was right first time. It'll be the people who are actively responsible for shafting the pensioners, the taxpayer, the British people, Tommy Robinson, you name it. And I would think Keir the traitor Starmer comes right at the top of the list there. I think Keir the traitor Starmer also knows this full well. I think he knows full well that if he is killed in prison, Tommy Robinson that is, he's going to be public enemy number one. He will never be able to go anywhere safely ever again. He will have to live with permanent 24/7 security because of the number of people that will want his head on a spike. As I said, I don't wish any harm on Keir the traitor Starmer, no matter how much of a degenerate scumbag that man is. I hate his guts, personally. But I still don't want to see that man come to harm until he has faced a full trial for war crimes against Tommy Robinson, for charges of treachery against the British people, and then we bring back capital punishment and give that man the death penalty, and we see him swinging from the gallows. Because that's what that man, I wholeheartedly believe, deserves. I thoroughly believe that man should be charged, and he should be the first Prime Minister in history to be sentenced to death by hanging. That man has no principles, no morals, no integrity, no nothing. Only thing that has ever come good from that man, that is Keir the traitor Starmer, is he's provided a role model for every single person in this country, English or not, of what not to become. Islam sees him as a useful idiot. nothing more. And he is becoming increasingly hated by everyone. Someone I've never really known about until yesterday, Danny Dyer, even started calling him a twat and a slag, I believe. I think from what I understand, he's got a bit of an anti-Trump thing going on with him. Trump derangement syndrome. So I guess I can't wholly be on his side, but I do agree 100% with what he said about Keir the traitor Starmer, about him being basically the biggest bellend in this country, quite frankly. The way I look at things, Keir the traitor Starmer is like a miasma. He is a toxic miasma over this country. He is poison. He is a parasite. And what do you do with parasites? You get rid of them. 2.5 billion plus for Ukraine, but not £300 for each pensioner in their homes. Sending our taxpayer money to fund wars and even terrorists in Syria. But he's throwing up the taxes for the British people. A man who is willing to see Tommy Robinson, as a human rights lawyer previously, suffer the most indecent conditions that breach Tommy's human rights. I don't know about you, but I don't think I could think of even one other person who would come close to the amount of dishonesty, treachery, and contempt for his own people than Keir the traitor Starmer. He honestly makes Tony Blair look like the Prime Minister of the millennia, quite frankly. And we all know how shit he was, and the war crimes that he committed against the indigenous Brits. Way I slice it, something needs to happen about this. We can't let them go through with this Belmarsh order. We really can't. Because we all know how easy it was that one time where Tommy got beat up in Woodhill prison, I believe, where basically he got locked in a room full of Muslims, and the Muslims, when they saw him, were like, oh my god, he's in the room with us, and then they started beating the shit out of them. And then the newspapers run a newspaper like it was really funny, Tommy gets done. Oh, but they wouldn't be laughing if it was roles reversed, if it was a Muslim being put in the prison and it was a bunch of white people going and beating the shit out of him. Oh, I guarantee you it would be front page and there'll be worldwide condemnation. But because it's Tommy Robinson, everyone laughs. Where are the fucking human rights lawyers? I cannot stress this enough. Rupert Lowe, thankfully, is the only MP I've seen right now who has the balls, whether up here or down there, or in my case both, to be able to challenge this. He has been the only MP, from what I understand, who has basically been writing to MPs, to the justice system, to tell them what is happening to Tommy Robinson is fundamentally wrong and that it needs to change. Like I said, anybody else, and human rights lawyers would have been all over this in an instant, especially if it was from the so-called religion of peace demographic. You know, the same people who come over from their third world shitholes or are raised up here by people from third world shitholes to basically hate the West, to disagree with Western beliefs and not respect our culture and our society and our beliefs. The same people that, turns out, as I've said in the past, Al-Muhajiroon, when there was a raid against them, they found a high-powered sniper rifle with tracer rounds. And the more I think about that, the more I'm convinced that there really are guns being transported to these hotels, quite frankly. I mean, hell, I had a chat with someone and they were even confirming that they were receiving high caliber weapons. High caliber military-esque weapons that they can use to wage war against us. Thank you. Speaking of war, let's also talk about what's been happening over in Russia and Ukraine. But more rather, let's talk about Keir the traitor Starmer on that point again. So, Keir the traitor Starmer went over to see Trump, got humiliated, blah, blah, blah. But now he sent that 2.5 billion that I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video to help Ukraine. And he's still going ahead with sending our peacekeeping forces over there. Or, sorry, peacekeeping. 10,000 soldiers plus. Although he was planning to send 30,000, which is about 40% of our current active reserve forces. So he's basically willing to give 40% of our army, I believe, hang on, yeah, it's a little shy of it, because if 32 is 40% of 80,000, that should be close enough, wouldn't you say? And then he comes out with this moral grandstanding bullshit speech about, oh, we're arguing for peace between Ukraine and Russia. No, you're only arguing for peace for Ukraine. And there was a deal that was put forward by the EU and NATO, which, let's face it, it's not even a deal. It may as well be a taunting piece of paper at this point. It may as well be taunting Putin. They may as well have called him a suka, aka a bitch, because what this thing entailed is basically 4 conditions, if I recall correctly. One is that he surrenders unconditionally towards Ukraine. Second, he gives up all the land that he went out of his way and managed to successfully acquire, and he gives it back to the Ukrainians. The third is that he pays, what was it, 500 billion in reparations. I can't remember if it was euros or dollars off the top of my head. And then, on top of all that, the fourth part of the deal would be that Vladimir Putin would resign as the leader of Russia and face charges for war crimes. And let's face it, nobody is going to take that deal if they have even a single functional brain cell in their head. Surprises me, actually, how I've still got my functional brain cells with that man running. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, no one's ever going to take that deal. You would have to be completely clinically insane to take a deal like that, because that deal is about as appealing as a plate filled with bullshit. And I'm talking actual bullshit. Not bullshit as in you're talking a load of bullshit, like Keir the traitor Starmer does all the time. And the way I slice it as far as this Ukraine and Russia war is concerned, whether Trump is a plonker or not is irrelevant. The one thing that you will always be able to argue in favour of, as far as Trump is concerned, he's the only one who has been arguing unconditionally for peace between the two nations. But that again, of course, is something the mainstream media will not want to tell you. While all the other dictators, or again, maybe I was right first time, and all the NATO lords and fucking dictators and kings and what have you, all of them have basically been calling for war all this time. Trump's the only one who's acting like an adult in the room with Vladimir Putin to get a deal done. As I've said before, this is not me being a Putin apologist, though I suspect maybe the odd NPC will come out and say that. But I am 100% going to say that you can't tell me that Vladimir Putin was not provoked into this war, quite frankly. When you've got people parking WMDs outside your front door and you've got a shadow war being waged in Russia, you cannot tell me that Russia attacked Ukraine unprovoked. If it weren't for people like Russell Brand mentioning this, we'd never ever know. It's kind of strange thinking about it, how we can go from absolutely hating stroke number 2, hating someone's guts for their views on a certain person, Farage in this case. So obviously Russell Brand was calling Farage pound shop Enoch Powell. Isn't it amazing how you can go from hating someone to liking someone? Because they're not afraid to speak the truth, or at least stand against the establishment. The way I slice all this is Vladimir Putin isn't a great guy at all. He's a bad guy, very bad, for invading Ukraine. He should not have done that. I don't know why my mind and my mouth almost said Poland, considering that was a certain far-left socialist. But I will say that they have over-exaggerated how bad Putin is. He's still a bad man, but he's not the most reprehensible human on the planet, I would say. I think we all know which far-left socialist deserves that title. And it's practically the only thing that stops Keir the traitor Starmer from taking that crown. But I digress. The way I look at Keir the traitor Starmer right now is that man is on his way out. He is. There isn't any shot he is going to make it to the end of the year. There is no shot that man is going to serve a 5-year term. The man is so unpopular, he makes a nonce look like any man's dream. And that really is saying something. Like, I cannot think of a man who is less popular than Keir the traitor Starmer. He is hated by many people on all sides, which really does take some doing. He's hated by a lot of people regarding Brexit. He's hated by people who believe he's not putting Britain first. He's hated by people on the left. He's hated by people on the right. He's probably hated by a few Muslims who think he's not being extreme enough. I don't think that man has got any chance of lasting the full 5-year term. He's got a better chance of winning the lottery than he has of serving the full 5 years. I cannot imagine being in his shoes right now. I really can't. I can't see myself being in a position where I literally have to walk in his piddly little shoes, where those awful looking 60s glasses have a hairdo that looks worse than the fucking beehive, and basically want to screw over every indigenous British person in this country. Like, between what he's doing with Russia, between what he's doing to the pensioners, between the tax hikes, between the persecution of people who were quite rightly concerned about their country, with children constantly being violated by illegal immigrants and a so-called religion of peace, and Keir the traitor Starmer does fuck all about it. And that's just a few things. He has got no chance. He's not popular at all with the British people. I think when I last said he had an approval rating of something or other, I think I said it was at -44, which I don't think any Prime Minister has ever had that much of a negative rating in the history of our democracy, or lack thereof. Imagine being a person who you post stroke number 3. Imagine someone posting on Facebook or social media and you get 10 months in prison, while you assault constituents, Mike Amesbury, while you get 10 weeks in prison and then have that sentence suspended when you decide to appeal it. I mean, these people really have no shame. Labour councillor, by the way. How is it justifiable that someone like Peter Lynch, God rest his soul, was given, 28, 32 months in prison? I think it was 2 years, 8 months, if I recall correctly, in prison for shouting at police, while he gets a suspended sentence for attacking people, which last time I checked, I think attacking people physically is a bit more serious than just saying something that a police officer has his feelings hurt over. But that's the thing with our establishment. It's two-tier policing, two-tier justice, two-tier governing, and blatant hypocrisy from the Labour Party. Sorry, the Nonce Party. And I definitely got it right the second time. The bottom line is Keir the traitor Starmer has so much going against him. He has so much going against his reign that he has no shot of staying in power. Tommy Robinson should not be going back to Belmarsh. Even though there is that little bit of devil's advocacy in there that says, well, he might get that governor who actually conceded that he should be given more rights and all that shit. And of course, sorry, nearly the fourth stroke this morning, which would leave me in a very bad position, is that Russia, yes, Putin is a bad man, but what they've done, provoking him, I dare to say is just as bad, if not worse. You cannot lie to the indigenous people of whatever country and say to them, this is an unprovoked war, while poking the Russian bear with a stick. Farage predicted this war would happen. Farage predicted that NATO and the EU would basically try to push for World War III. He's right. Keir the traitor Starmer is also pushing for it. As I said, think about that deal again. 500 billion in reparations, have to surrender all the stuff that you claimed from Ukraine, unconditionally surrender to Ukraine, and then have to step down as leader of the country and face war crimes. Nobody is ever going to take that deal if they're worth the slightest bit of salt, quite frankly. But this is a batshit bonkers world we live in, and anything can happen. But I will say this much right now to finish this off regarding Tommy Robinson. If that man is killed in prison, it will be the darkest days Britain has ever faced. It'll be the darkest time that Britain will ever face for a long time. Perhaps, maybe ever. Who knows? But what I do know is that while Tommy Robinson is being persecuted in prison, his human rights are being violated. And the lawyers should be brought in to cover this case, because they would make a fucking packet over this. And as for Keir the traitor Starmer, pray to whatever god or deity you worship, because the British people are coming for you. And we will have justice against you when the gavel comes down and have you sentenced for your war crimes.